Today we're going to talk about the way in which cynicism and resentment corrodes our willpower and corrodes our resilience by stealing from us the power we need to work through difficult situations of suffering. Proverbs 22:11 says this, "Drive out a scoffer and strife will go out, and quarreling and abuse will cease. He who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious will have the king as his friend." End quote. We live in a culture that worships victimhood. Every expedient American is clamoring for a victim card on which to build their platform. I've certainly done it myself. And the reason is because victimhood has become the new common American value around which people construct their identities and their hope and their community and their affiliation with others. If we have nothing to complain about together, well, how close could we reasonably be? How hopeful could we reasonably be? And this fetish for accumulating trauma has licensed a popular and widespread cynicism as socially acceptable, as the natural attitude of the people. And worse, on social media, this cynicism is seen as socially virtuous. People praise eye-rolling and exasperated exhaling and a witty gif, but they don't realize the cost of cynicism on their souls. Cynicism is predicated upon entitlement conceptually. Cynicism presupposes that I exist in a system that owes me better than it's given me, and I don't share any responsibility for the improvement of that system. That's what cynicism presupposes. And I don't want to understand this system. I just want to roll my eyes at it. And I want it to be better, and I want to start benefiting better from it now. I don't want to dignify the people in it. I don't want to dignify my own sense of responsibility for it, because I certainly don't have one. I just want to scoff at it. And the problem is, and this is, see, what we call today cynicism, it's what the Bible calls scoffing. The problem is that scoffing creates an ethical hierarchy between the scoffer and the object of the scoffing. And somehow, the scoffed is categorized as someone worth scoffing at by scoffing at them. The more the scoffer scoffs, the more the cynic rolls his or her eyes at the world around them, the higher opinion they have of themselves. The quarter in the jukebox of cynicism is humility. The cost of scoffing is self-awareness. The cost of resentment toward people around you is strength of will. The more cynical you become, the more seriously you take yourself, and the more blind you become to yourself, and the weaker you make yourself. The less of a sense of humor you have about yourself. The more you see yourself as an object of abuse by the world, and the more justified you feel in your abuse of the world. The more you posture and critique and wrinkle your nose and hashtag resist and give side eye to your neighbor, the more you become an insufferable tyrant. You become a mini tyrant. I am not better than my neighbor. I am not better than the system in which I live. Any ugliness in my habitat in which I inhabit is born by me. I own the ugliness in my life and in my community and among my friends. I own it. It is mine. It is not theirs. I am not the Messiah. I am not the pure lamb who exists among evildoers. I bear a part of every ounce of ugliness in my life. And that is God's rule for scoffing. That is the biblical rule of eye rolling. If I'm going to roll my eyes at someone, it's going to be me. If I'm going to scoff at someone, it's going to be me. If I'm going to morally critique someone, it's going to be me. I am not entitled to cynicism. I do not have the right to roll my eyes. I do not have the ethical right to roll my eyes at someone else. I am not entitled to pretension. The world does not owe me a hearing about my complaints. In fact, actually, I have a right to roll my eyes. But the moral structure of the universe, the moral fabric of the universe is not on my side. If I want to make a credible critique of the world or of a human being, I will begin by embodying the principle I see lacking in the world. I know it's cliche, right? Quote Gandhi, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. That's how Gandhi talked, I'm pretty sure, right? Even though that's not actually a Gandhi quote. It's like a sort of a summary of something he said once. But, good. It's cliche as hell, but it's absolutely true in a sense far more profound than Gandhi states. People often think, yeah, be the change you want to see in the world. No, that's not what I'm saying that, but I'm saying something much, much more consequential and grave than that. There is a cost to making a distinction between yourself and the world, and that distinction is a rupture in yourself. And it is in that rupture that there festers the virus and the gangrene of scoffing and cynicism. If you allow yourself to be cynical, you make yourself weak. You infect yourself with a disease that will show up in other areas of your life. You set yourself up for destruction. And when disaster strikes, you will have already killed whatever positivity you could have used to demonstrate resilience in that situation. Harboring cynicism in your heart is like pouring acid down your bathroom pipes. You're just asking for the entire structure of your life to explode. That's why people who buy into victim culture, they need trigger warnings all the time. They're extremely fragile people, even though they come across as very violent and angry and have sort of this brash, strong personality where they set their chin against the world, but they're actually very weak, very fragile people. And they've made themselves this way by buying a script that says your survival depends on you being coddled and the world should conform to your desires. No, you need to conform yourself to a higher standard, and then you can take place in the changing and the transmutation of the world into meeting that higher standard. As Jordan Peterson says, it begins with cleaning your room. It depends on you developing a thick skin. You don't need a trigger warning. No person needs a trigger warning. That is rooted in cynicism. It's rooted in unwarranted entitlement and resentment. Cynicism creates weak people who need to verbally bully other people into accommodating their self-imposed weakness. Don't be cynical. Don't be weak. Roll your eyes at yourself before you roll them at anyone else. That will make you strong. That will make you productive. That will make you resilient in times of suffering. That will enable you and empower you to make meaning out of suffering. And that will make you the kind of trustworthy, faithful individual that can raise a family rather than a weak-minded, cowering individual who has the needs of a child. The beauty is that it comes down to a single choice. I'm not going to roll my eyes at the world. I'm not going to roll my eyes at my neighbor. I'm not going to roll my eyes at God. I'm not going to mock God by presuming my own hierarchical superiority above everybody else in my situation. No, I'm going to take ownership of it. I'm going to bear what I resent in order to change it. And in order to have the strength to do that, I must be willing to make small changes in my life. I can't pick it out in public if my room is a mess. I begin with my room. I begin with my daily habits. I begin by orienting and transforming myself. And once I can muster the strength and the discipline and the willpower to do that, well, then I can participate by analogy in the same way in the world, to be a positive force for change rather than a passive critic who is dying on the inside and who is shriveling away and whose willpower is atrophying because of the corruptive virus of victimhood culture. Don't buy into it. Don't be cynical. Don't be childish. Hear the word of God and receive. Drive out a scoffer and strife will go out. and quarreling and abuse will cease. He who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious will have the king as his friend.